Hello guys, welcome again to another video. I think this is a third attempt to make this video because I've been doing a lot of silly mistakes. Hopefully this time around I'm able to complete the video without any of the mistakes. Okay. So welcome to another video. If you're new to this now at this time, I would say really lame. I don't want to say I don't want to use vulgar language. It's a very lame channel of mine that I've made, which isn't really picking up much. And if you're new to it, hopefully in time it will, you know, um, be as good as any channel. But if you're new, please subscribe and like the video, comment, give some type of feedback. And also, please subscribe so that you get more videos on C programming, which could be very useful to you. And you might ask yourself, okay, there's so many channels online that teach C programming. What's so different about this one? Because here, we go to the core of things. Like in programming, we don't just teach you how to program because you can't learn programming by learning how to program only. You learn something by learning the concept. Why is it like that? How does that work? What does that do? Most programmers online, and this is very dangerous because I'm a programmer myself and I'm doing programming in school, software engineering in school. And most programming online, the thing that I found most appalling by them is that they just jump straight into programming without first teaching you the concepts, the core concepts of what you're supposed to be doing. Whereas I will be teaching you first the concepts before you could jump into the programming itself, which you're going to be doing in start probably by next week after we've learned each and every concept there is to learn. See, we're going to jump into programming. So, and we're also going to be learning other programming languages. But one thing about programming that I know that I've discovered is that once you learn one language, the other ones they just fall at your feet. They just give themselves to you. They just submit. So you don't have to do too much. You could jump from C to Java in just 2 weeks. Not even 2 weeks. Okay, 2 weeks. Just Java to JavaScript in 2 weeks. Okay, maybe PHP might be a little different, but you basically know the concepts. So what's important is understanding the concepts. What does int mean? What does void mean? What is a C library? We learned that in the previous video. What kind of data types I see? What's the difference between the data types that you see? Not just learn how to declare a variable. Oh, this is a variable. I use learn the concepts. So today it's most on C programming language, int main and void main functions. So we have two kinds of functions in C, which is the int main function and the void main function. If you've come across C before, you've probably seen one of these functions and you've asked yourself, what are they? What are they? How do they work? What's the difference between the two? Why use int, when to use void, and the return zero statement. What is it? Because you see it all the time in every C program, but what is it? Like, what does it do? So I'm gonna be teaching you that. Okay, hosted by me. Okay. So int main and void main, how do they work? And the return zero statement by Leslie. So you can download this documentation in the description. And also, if you would like, you can join our WhatsApp group for ALX students, of course, or anyone who wants to learn programming. I'll leave the link in the description. So what is int main? This is your code to display your main function, the function that you're going to be using the most in programming. This function returns a value. which is an integer. That's why we call it int. So now you know why we say int. Int is a sort of data type, which is a number, which is an integer. Okay, so that's what int is. It's just integer. So we call it int main because it's supposed to return a value which is an integer, whereas void does not return a value. Okay, it's a function basically for doing something and returning nothing in the end. So with int, we return a value. Why do we return a value with int? We'll find that out in just a few moments. Okay, this is your file, your code to declare your main function. Usually a function that will do a calculation. Usually. Why use int main for doing calculations, manipulations, sort of like where you do this, do that, 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 do that. You want to use int main for that. So you know why you should use int main for that. Usually a function that will do calculation, a function that will take in an input and give out an output. Okay. And it is the most used of the two main functions in C programming language. This is the int main function. This is your go-to guide for whenever you want to do anything that's complex. I'll call it complexes. Even if it's just taking one number and multiplying it to another number, this is your go-to guide. Use this function. Always use this function. Okay. Moving on. This is your syntax for the int main function. So you start at the top. Include your stdio, standard input and output library. We've learned about that in the previous video. If you don't know it, you can go watch it. Include your library, and then you declare your main function. Okay, there's many functions, and you see this is the main one. It's the one that embodies your whole program. Okay, we call it a class. In Java, we call it the main class. Here we call it the main function. That's just difference. It's just a little bit of difference here and there. But once you know one programming language, you can know the other programming language. Okay. And unfortunately, in JavaScript, we don't have such functions. You just code. But there's not much difference. Declare your variables. You declare your variables. Int is supposed to A, where you're gonna be putting your values. Okay. Print statement, maybe let's say ask the user, please enter a number or any number or a character. You use the printf function. We've learned about that in the first video. Here you use the scanf function. You run your calculations, you do your operations, this times this, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then you display the output. And then you see the statement here at the end. It says return 0. Return 0. Okay. Why return 0? Remember, I said in the previous video that in programming, most programming languages are asynchronous, meaning they start executing from the top all the way down to the bottom. Okay. So how will your operating system know that the program ran correctly? It knows that by the function returning, because it's an integer function, it returns 0, which 0 is an integer. So once it gets to that statement, it knows that, oh, the operation was successful. But if for some reason the operation isn't successful, the function will start executing here. Declares the variables, the print statement, takes in the input from the user, and for some reason the user does not put in the right input. He puts in a C instead of a 0, and we're just expecting an integer. and then it runs the calculation, and then it stops. When it stops, it does not get to the return 0 statement because it has stopped. It does not know what else to do. It does not get to the return 0 statement. And then when the operating system checks, the function did not return 0. It knows that now this function did not run successfully. So there's an error. That's how your computer knows. In C program, that's how your computer is able to find an error. So that's why we use the int main function, because we can return a value. It returns a value. Okay. Whilst the void does not return a value. Okay. This one returns a value. In this case, we say return 0 to tell the operating system, oh, the steps have been ran correctly, because it starts executing from the top. Okay. Next statement jumps here. The next statement, it jumps here. With whatever it got from here, it jumps to the next statement. It uses it here. So it's asynchronous. And then it goes to the final statement. And then it goes to the final statement. It returns 0. Tells your computer, and your computer looks at the function that has just been executed, looks at the value that it has returned. If it's 0, it knows what, this function is executed successfully. There's no error. If it's not 0, then it knows what, there's a problem, because when as soon as the function is ran, the operating system would assign it to a variable, and then that variable, once it stops, it looks at the value, because it's an integer. Remember, this function is an integer. It looks at that variable and it finds a number in that variable, which if it's other than 0, it knows, there's an error, you need to fix so and so. But if it's 0, then it knows, there's no error. That's how smart programmers are. They should tell you how smart, because the computer doesn't know what an error is. It just looks at values. So if you think about it, a computer doesn't know what an error is. So how do you tell a computer that there's an error in this function? Is that you know how a computer or how a program is executed. It starts from the top. And this was all created by programmers. So it starts executing from the top and it goes to the bottom. And then when you say return 0, that's how you tell the computer that there's no error. But if it doesn't return 0, it returns a value, say 1, 2, I don't know which value is assigned for an error. And then it would know, see, there's an error. I have to go for that particular error. Okay, so this should kind of tell you how this whole thing operates, how this whole thing works. So the key things to remember on the return 0 statement is that that's what it's used for. So now, if you didn't know, now you know, because programming can be boring to learn if you do not understand what's happening. Like, you have to understand what's going on behind the scenes of your program, so that it's easier for you to understand, why am I doing this? Because doing something you don't understand is boring and to bore you, and you will never learn how to be a programmer if you do not understand. So stop watching videos of people just going ahead with a program of first teaching you the concept behind what is going on. If you think I am BSing, I could recommend a book to you. Just read a book, because the book will teach you at least the concepts of something before it takes you into programming. Don't just get too excited and jump into programming. You're gonna have problems along the way. Trust me, I know. Okay, so moving on. What is the void main function? Like I've explained, the void does not return any value. Void means nothing. It's just nothing. It's like, what do they call a black hole? They call it an empty void. It's nothingness. Just I don't know what's happening to the black hole, but I know that there's nothing there. It's emptiness. It's just I don't know. I don't understand emptiness. But that's what it is. It's empty. So it does not return anything. When you say void, your computer knows, oh, don't mind him. You know, he's not supposed to do much. Okay. So when to use the int, because it's supposed to return 0, use it when doing calculations, manipulations, operations, things that are complex. When to use void, you use it for simpler things like just loading a message, right? Void main print f. Okay, hello world, you was such a wonderful world, blah 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 blah. Then you end your function and then you print that out, so it doesn't really do much. But with int, use it for calculations, use it for those types of things. So now you know the difference between void main and int main. And also the return 0 statement, what is it for? It's for checking how to say, some people might call it different, but for me it's for error checking. It looks for errors. If it returns 0, which means the function has ran to that. That's why it's at the bottom, right? So another thing is that if you say return 0 somewhere in between your function, let's say you say, okay, let's just run it back so that you could see here. Let's say this return 0 statement was written here instead. Okay. So as soon as the function returns 0, the program will terminate. Okay. So you could use that again in if statements. Okay. I've seen some programs do this in JavaScript, I think. You could use that in if statement, say, okay, if this certain statement is true, then return 0, which means end the execution of the main function. Okay. But if it's not true, then you do not return 0. You proceed with these steps. Okay, we're gonna learn about if statements. If statements, loops, and all that types with condition checking. I'd call them condition driven functions, because they work on a certain condition. So with an if statement, you could say, ask the user, what is your password? And they would say, oh, my password is so and so. So you'd have a proven password, and then you compare with an if statement. So if password 1 is equals to password 2, meaning the values inside those two passwords are the same. If they're not the same, then return 0 means, sorry. Okay, if password 1 is equals to password 2, then do this. Take that user to the next step, where you give them this, give them this, give them this, give them access, or I say give them access to the profile, whatever, maybe it's on Facebook or something. But if it's not true, then return 0, which means stop. Okay, so the operating system will look at the function and say, oh, it has returned 0, which means it has run successfully. When you take this statement and you place it right here, these statements beneath the return 0 statement will not execute, because the operating system would look at the function and say, oh, it has returned 0, meaning it has run successfully, so you can stop it. So you can stop the operation. It is done. I hope you understand. If you don't quite understand me, I'll explain it more when you start coding, so you can really see it in real time what exactly is happening here. So all this concept I'll try and implement it into my code so you know and you understand, because it is very important that you understand what you're doing, because you won't be able to code properly if you do not understand what the hell you're doing. Okay. So moving on, what is a void function? A void function takes in no value and returns no value, usually used just to display an output, like I said before. Here's the syntax: include std input, output, standard input, and output library. Void mean like void, there's nothing there, doesn't return anything. Display an output, right? Oh, Christmas is wonderful. Oh, ALX is tiring, but it's fun. And then there's you don't have to do much. And then understanding the difference. With int main function, it usually does some manipulations of variables or calculations. Okay, that's the int function. It's an integer function. So it does some sort of manipulation of variables or calculation that can have errors. Because when you're calculating something or doing some sort of manipulation, you can have an error. You can have an error there. But with void, it's maybe it might be a syntax that you wrong. You wrote scanf wrong, or you missed one or double quote when you were writing it. There's not much error in void statement because it's pretty basic, but with int you can have errors. So once you have an error, the program won't execute all the way to the bottom where you have a return 0 statement, and then the computer will know that there's an error, there's something wrong, and then it will react appropriately to that error. And that can have errors, so the computer needs to know that the function execution was not successful. Okay. It being successful means that it executed all the way to the bottom, to the last statement, where it returns 0. Okay, it was not successful by assigning that function during execution. Like I said, when the function started executing, the computer's operating system assigns that function to a variable somewhere in the computer's program. So these are things that you don't do. So the computer has its own operations that it does, its own coding that it does itself, while you yourself are running your own code that you did yourself. So it sort of works in its own program inside of its own programming, assigns the function. Upon executing the function, takes that function, it gives it to some variable, and maybe it says, okay, this variable, this function is in the meantime is equals to 1. And then executes and executes and executes. And then at the end, the function ends, it stops executing. And then it looks at the variable, and when it gets to the return statement, the return statement would then change the value inside of that variable to 0. And then it looks at the variable and says, okay, the function is executed successfully. But if it did not execute successfully, then, it knows that there's an error, something is wrong. Okay, by assigning a function during the execution of a variable and returning a number other than 0 if it did not execute successfully, like what I've just said. But if it does execute successfully, the computer will know because the function will return 0. We declare it an integer function because it can sort of like the value inside of the function, like the whole function, a variable that checks for the error uses integer numbers, okay, which is 0 or any other number. We declared an integer function for that simple purpose, error reading. With void functions, nothing much is expected of them other than just writing an output. We don't need to look for many errors. Okay, so now you understand why int main, why void main, what's the difference? And also you understand the return zero statement. Okay, so quick recap, the return statement is used for showing if a function execution was successful or not. The int main takes in a value, manipulates it, and then returns a value. Okay, the void main does nothing with a value, it returns nothing. It's just a function that does nothing much. Okay, so thank you for watching. Okay, and also please subscribe. It will be for your own good. Okay, but it is kind of is that's kind of true. So please subscribe, okay? And also share the video with your friends, your ALX group, and you could also please join our group if we're sort of starting out. So with everything big, it starts out small, so we'll expand, and then hopefully also this channel expands. Maybe I'll look back at it in 5 months and it'll be bigger than it is today. But everything grows really, so it probably be big. So thank you for watching, and leave a like, a comment, and share the video with your friends. And yeah, that's pretty much it on int main functions and void main functions, and also the return zero statement. If you didn't know what they were for, now you know.